They don't want what we know out there. You'll never get this on CNBC. But our school system will never tell us that, because they're part of the process. Fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. I know the game of the rich. My rich dad taught me. You know it because you're the banker. The bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. All over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that. Most people know that. The way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not. Poverty hurts. I mean, I don't like it. And I don't like that our academic system's so corrupt. You know, we know the banking system's corrupt. We know politics is corrupt. But academics is just as corrupt.
I mean, one thing if it's the banking and the politics, but this is where we send our children and we trust them to do the right things for them, and yet they're being not taught something so fundamental. Like you asked your dad when you were a kid, Dad, you asked your teacher, when are you gonna teach us about money? And it was just,
never.
Never.
And they never will. The school system is actually teaching people to be poor. The school system will never teach you about money. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. My father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. Poverty is passed on. It's taught in your families. And middle class is taught in families. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Dad's lesson number 1, the rich don't work for money. You know, the banker friends, they're not working for money.
They have money working for them.
Yep. Very big difference in mentality here. The financial industry is 2 things, debt and taxes. Debt and taxes. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that.
We're all taught that as kids.
Yeah, because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. You know, Japan still has zero interest rate policy. And the Japanese are the biggest savers in the world. And I'm Japanese, I'm 4th generation. They're not too bright.
Right.
Why do you keep saving when they're printing it? You know, when I'm in Japan, and that's what I mean by fear. They're so afraid because the Japanese, good culture, but they do as they're told.
Right. It's very conformist.
Very conformist, very conformist. So they just do as they're told, and then they just save money, and their government, this guy Abenomics, is just printing trillions of it and buying ETFs with it, and they don't know what to do. They're afraid they might make a mistake. They're good little students in school. Go to school, get a job, don't make mistakes. So what happens to the average person in a financial crash, they don't know what to do. And right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. You know, the purchasing power of the yen, the euro, the rupiah, all going down. And people are working harder and harder and harder, and the central banks of the world are printing more money.
And so if someone's listening to us that's stuck in that poor middle class trap and they hear it's their fear that ultimately is keeping them from that, that's a hard thing to hear, Robert. But you're gonna give them the information about what they can do if they can get out of that fear.
Well, every time I do a lot of speaking to the masses out there, you know, Lehman doesn't invite me in because we're gone, but they go, well, what, you know, it's so risky. What you're saying is risky. And I said, what I do isn't risky. for me, but it's risky for you. And when somebody says, what is risk? You have to look in the mirror. Do you know what I mean? For me to fly in Vietnam, that was high risk. But the higher the risk, the more you have to study. You know that, I know that. So if you're not going to study, you're not going to practice and all that, then you should do what Wall Street tells you to do. Buy 401ks, mutual funds, ETFs and all that. But that's where they're fake assets, because they only make Wall Street or the City of London rich. Just watch where the cash is flowing. Follow the money. The reason the rich don't work for money is number one expense is tax. See, there's three kinds of income: earned, portfolio, passive. So earned income is if I get a job, that's earned income. If I'm a doctor or a programmer, that's earned income because I'm working for it. If I buy, let's say, Apple for $10 and I sell it for $20, that's portfolio income, capital gains.
Yeah.
But passive income, which is cash flow, is never taxed. So it's not, and so these guys are screaming right now in America, tax the rich. I said, good luck. Because most of the guys complaining, they don't know there's three kinds of income. And the rich don't have jobs anyway. They have assets. And so the average schmo out there, poor guy, sent the kid to school. They don't learn this. So that's why in Fake, as you were talking about it, there's a newspaper article about Jared Kushner. Yeah. And he explains how the Trumps and the Kushners don't pay taxes and make millions of dollars. And the reporter couldn't understand him because our schools will never teach you that three types of income.
And they judged him and say they're wrong and it's cheating. And we see that over and over again. Amazon not paying taxes. What do you say to people when they come up to you and say, Robert, it's not fair. It's not fair they're not paying taxes.
Well, there's always three sides to a coin, heads, tails, and the edge. So which side of the coin are you on? From my side, it's fair. But this is the difference. Everybody can do the same thing I do because the tax laws are for everybody. We don't say, well, the tax law is only for the rich. No, the tax laws are for everybody to use if you have the right financial education. And the reason I'm an advocate of financial education, without that education, you have to pay taxes. You see, very few people will buy what I do, make $1 million and pay zero tax. That takes, and my rich dad taught me that playing Monopoly. That's how it started, 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Or the McDonald's formula. I write about it here. McDonald's, Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
McDonald's is in the real estate business. So they sell hamburgers, but they buy real estate, so they pay no taxes. This guy Bezos, he's $16 billion. How much tax did they pay on that $16 billion? Zero.
And that's all legal. Anyone can do it.
Everybody can do it.
But most people lack the education.
Correct.
So Jared learned about money when he was a kid by watching his father, by watching these people invest in real estate, and said, wow, not only do you get to make the money, you get to keep the money. That's a big problem a lot of people don't understand. Look how much money I made, but how much did you keep? Because that could be half.
How much tax did you pay?
Right, what tax did you pay? And so you always say, this is the law. The law is true for every citizen. You can do it, but most people just don't do it. Sometimes, like you said, they don't have the education, but you need to have a plan if you're gonna go do risky things.
Well, it's not risky. To me, what's risky is having a job and paying taxes.
Yeah.
And saving money because they're printing it. That's the worst thing of all. And that's why there's fake money, fake teachers, because the teachers they don't know it.
Right.
And fake assets, because Wall Street or the City of London or Lehman Brothers or Goldman and all, they're not going to tell you this.
Yeah.
How are there billionaire bankers today? Aren't they supposed to be watching your money,
You said in here also, the greatest asset you have is your mind. What does that mean?
If you really want to be rich, take a class on real estate. Once you understand real estate is based on debt, learn how to use debt as money. So that once you learn how to use debt as money, you can never say, I can't afford it. You see, because the banks will give you, so the banks, after the crash of 2008, the banks gave me $300 million tax-free to buy real estate that the idiots had lost. I hate this, and they were idiots because the prices were so high. Why would you buy it at the top of a market? Don't you know that's going to crash? No, this is, that was the subprime was a derivatives market, MBSs and all that stuff, had driven the price of real estate so high, and the rest of us were just waiting. And then when the whole thing came crashing down, all this real estate was now available, and they needed, the Fed and those guys in the Treasury needed guys like us to go in there. So Wall Street gave us hundreds of millions of dollars to mop up all that real estate these guys had lost. Now, it's fair because everybody could do it.
Right.
So, when I asked the average guy, I said, why don't you use debt? They can't even get a loan because their scores, their FICO scores, I don't even have them here, are so bad.
Right.
So that's what's going on in the world today. It's fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. The school teachers will never tell you that because they don't know it. My poor dad never knew that. And they think the rich are crooks. The rich just play by different laws. The rules are the same, but you have to do what the government wants you to do. The reason I have so much money is because I don't say I can't do it. I just go, how can I do it? And I just go and do it. I make a lot of mistakes, but that's how I learn.
And until you change your mindset,
Correct.
Money won't help you, right?
Correct.
And we see that with people that win the lottery, people that make more money, they still have the same problem.
Right, the money will disappear that fast. Just like most pro athletes, they make millions of dollars, and 65% are bankrupt 5 years later. The moment I pay you, you think like an employee. That's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. The moment you accept the paycheck, your brain goes dead. As long as you're hungry, you'll think. You see people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is it just creates more poor people.
Give a man a fish, he fishes for the day, or eats for the day.
Yeah, you give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, but you teach them to fish.
Do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robert?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know.
Right.
Keep them poor. Poor will always be amongst us because it starts up here.
And your rich dad used to say what instead of, I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? What would it take, or why should I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say I can't afford it, your mind shuts down and you become what you say. To be rich, you have to give something. I have to produce books and games, and I purchase real estate, I provide housing, provide jobs and all that. That's why I'm rich. But greedy people produce nothing. We all have fear. To be truthful, we all have fear. It's just how you deal with it. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, but knowledge empowers imagination. And what most people lack is real business knowledge, like accounting, like debt, like taxes. You got to know that stuff, but they don't teach it in school to anybody. People who are afraid of making mistakes, like they teach in school, they don't ever grow. Because spirituality is there's good and there's bad, there's right and there's wrong, there's up and there's down. Most people only want to be right, they only want to be positive. Well, you can't have that, that's not reality. Every time I failed, it was like, good, I said, okay, what have I learned? And the average person, the reason they're poor is they haven't failed. They play it so safe, they haven't made any mistakes like they taught in school. That means they don't learn anything. That's why the school system's actually fundamentally corrupt. It's anti-education. And I think what most people do is they let their parents or their friends talk them out of life. So afraid of failing. But failing is how we succeed. Our schools punish you for making mistakes. And that's why we have so many people who are so afraid of admitting they make mistakes or afraid of failing. So as far as the subject of debt, there's good debt and bad debt. Again, it goes back to the financial statement. Income, expense, asset, liability. So debt falls in here. So let's say I'm going to buy, everybody says I'm going to buy a house, and everybody says my house is an asset. That's not true. Your house is a liability. I don't care if you have no debt on it or not. A house is a liability. Same as if you have a car. car is a liability. And the reason for that is, as we talked about earlier, the 6 words that are basics of financial education, financial intelligence: income, expense, asset, liability. And the 2 other words are cash flow. So when you look at the average person, they have a job, money comes in here, they pay for their house, and the money goes to a bank through a mortgage. So it's not an asset because the cash is flowing out, so it's a liability. So the definition of liability: does it take money from your pocket? And for an asset, does it put money in your pocket? So when I have a rental property here, it puts money in my pocket. So if I live in the house, it's a liability, because even if I have no debt on it, I still have taxes, depreciation, repairs, and upkeep, insurance, and all this. When I rent a property, I've done a good job buying it and structuring it. Every month, it sends me money. So I started off when I was 25. I had a little 1-bedroom condo, and it put $25 in my pocket. It was a start. So this was good debt. You say the debt also went out and paid, but it also put $25 in my pocket. So net, I was making money from my little house. So today, my wife and I own 6,500 of them. And every month, 6,500 houses put money in my pocket. My people who live in them love me and all this because they have a place to live. But all of this comes from debt. So they're 100% finance here. It's all debt. So this is good debt. And what makes it good debt are the 2 most important words: cash flow. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Any comments on this?
So numerous people my age actually think debt is horrible. And you just showed us a perfect example of cash flow and how debt can generate income. And many entrepreneurs use this formula to make money on a day-to-day basis.
So what most people do is they have student loan debt, SL, and that debt is going out this way. You know, it doesn't put any money in your pocket. You can say, well, I have a job. Well, that's still you working for it. So I don't work for any of this money here. I do this job once, set the deal up. Every year I add more and more and more of it. I'm borrowing money from here. It's coming here and going this way. So the debt is putting money in my pocket, and bad debt is taking money from my pocket. So the problem is, if you're going to use debt, you've got to be much smarter than this person here. You've got to be very, very smart. That's why I took real estate classes when I was 25, and I've never stopped taking real estate classes. Because you buy a piece of real estate and you make a mistake, this turns into a liability. If I get the renter leaves the place, this goes here that fast, and the cash flows that way. Okay, it's going out of my pocket. So it has nothing to do with real estate. It has nothing to do with the car. Nothing to do with student loan. It has to do with these 2 words here: